I fooled everyone with the baby in my belly and became the socialite wife of a deceased young CEO, even though we were strangers. Now, 3 years later, he's back, and he's alive. What am I going to do? The sole heir to the top-tier, ultra-rich Hudson family, the unmarried Mr. Liam Hudson, was reported missing in an avalanche, and local police concluded the case as a fatal accident. This meant the Hudson family was left without a successor. At Liam's funeral, the group's other shareholders, unable to hold back any longer, began to aggressively demand control of the company from the family. Liam! How could you leave me all alone? Suddenly, a young, tear-soaked pregnant woman, me, staggered into the funeral, collapsing before Liam's portrait. Liam's mother looked at my belly with caution. Who are you? I am the mother of Liam's child. He promised me he would marry me as soon as he returned home this time. My voice trembled, yet I forced myself to be steady. The entire memorial hall exploded in noise. Absurd! Where did this woman come from? Trying to climb the social ladder using the Hudsons? She must be dreaming. Sarcasm, doubt, and disdain were hurled at me. My palms were slick with cold sweat, and my legs were shaking so hard I could barely stand. But I could not retreat. I straightened my spine, shielding my belly protectively. I am willing to submit to a paternity test. After a brief silence, the Hudson family lawyer spoke coolly, very well. Then let us verify whether you are speaking the truth or lying. A few days later, the test results lay before everyone. The bold, red digits 99.99% were conspicuously displayed. Everyone was stunned. No one had expected this utterly ordinary woman to be carrying the bloodline of the Hudson family's only heir. Ultimately, the Hudson family was forced to yield. Starting today, you will move into the Hudson estate. Liam's mother, the current true power holder of the Hudson family, stared at me and slowly stated, "You are the future Lady Hudson, and the child you carry is the heir to the Hudson family." I breathed a sigh of relief, for every word had been a lie. A month prior, I clutched the pregnancy diagnosis in my hands, listening as the doctor told me, "Miss Stella, your constitution is too weak. If you terminate the pregnancy, your life could be in danger." I should have had a bright future, but a few months ago, at a charity gala, I had a reckless one-night stand with a young man after we both mistakenly ate drugged pastries. I dismissed it as an accident and left quietly the next morning, never seeing him again. But now, I was pregnant. Worse, the place I worked ruthlessly fired me after hearing the news. Penniless, I huddled in my cheap rental, and in my most desperate moment, the news on TV offered me a lifeline. Breaking news! Liam Hudson, the sole heir to the Hudson Group, has gone missing in an avalanche in the Alps, his fate unknown. The man in the photo was him, the man from that night. I made a bold decision. This was a chance given to me by fate. For my child, it was the only way. Today, I finally stood at the heart of this sprawling mansion. I was now Mrs. Hudson, and I would live every day burdened by this immense lie. 3 years passed. Theo was now 3 years old. He was the only light in my life, smart, lively, and adorable. As his mother, I managed the family's social engagements, internal networking, and Theo's education as the Lady Hudson, handling everything meticulously. In 3 years, I had made almost no mistakes. Finally, in the elite social circles, I earned the reputation of being the most proper and dignified Lady Hudson. Until that day, when the news struck me like a thunderclap. Major breakthrough. Liam Hudson, heir to the Hudson Group who went missing 3 years ago, has been found overseas. At that moment, the water glass in my hand crashed to the floor. Liam, back? How could this be possible? My heart hammered like a drum, my breath came in short gasps. Over the past 3 years, I had dreamed countless times of his return, and counted my blessings every time it was just a nightmare. Because the moment he came back, my lie would be utterly exposed. I had posed as his wife and Theo's mother, securing the family's recognition through a simple DNA test. But if Liam truly returned alive, did I have any escape route left? My first instinct was to run. To take Theo and leave immediately, far away from this gilded cage. But I knew that with the Hudson family's influence, they would find Theo, even if I fled to the ends of the earth. The child was their bloodline, their future heir. Soon, the family sent people to bring Liam back to the mansion. The first time I saw him, I nearly forgot how to breathe. Compared to that night 3 years ago, he was even more austere and formidable than my memory recalled. His tall figure, deep-set, dark eyes, and an invisible aura of pressure surrounded him. But when I looked closely, I noticed a certain blank unfamiliarity in his gaze. "You are?" He stared at me, his brow furrowed, as if seeing me for the very first time. My heart lurched violently. The doctor explained that due to a severe head injury during the avalanche, Liam had lost all memory of the past 3 years. This meant He didn't remember who I was, he didn't remember our one night, and he certainly didn't remember our past. Fate, astonishingly, had given me another chance. However, my heart was far from relieved. I understood that the truth was like a sword hanging over my head, ready to drop at any moment. That night, I watched the sleeping Theo, gently caressing his cheek. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Mommy has to stay. No matter what, I have to protect you." I couldn't bear to lose Theo, and I didn't dare gamble that the Hudson family would simply let me go. For my child, I could only continue the pretense, continuing to play the role of his wife in front of Liam. But it wasn't easy. Though Liam had amnesia, he was still razor sharp. His eyes were so penetrating they seemed to see through souls. Every time our eyes met, I felt overwhelmingly guilty. I tried my best to avoid him and minimize any time alone with him. Just when I thought I could temporarily keep up the charade, Liam suddenly appeared at Theo's bedroom door. I hastily put away the storybook and said with a smile, "He's almost asleep." Liam didn't move. His deep gaze was fixed steadily on Theo's face. The look was so intent, so heavy, it chilled my heart. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "He looks a lot like me." My breath suddenly hitched. The moment Theo launched himself into Liam's arms, I froze. The child's eyes were sparkling like stars in the sky. His small hands wrapped tightly around Liam's neck as he cried, "Daddy! Daddy! You're finally back!" My heart twisted painfully. Theo had no idea that this daddy didn't remember me, let alone the absurdity of that one night. But the child didn't understand any of that, he only knew he finally had complete paternal love. What was I supposed to do? I hadn't anticipated that the sight of my child's smile would make me waver from my plan. Initially, I had meticulously avoided being alone with Liam. But Theo was only 3, he desperately craved a father's love. "Mommy, can you and Daddy eat dinner with me? Mommy, you have to read the story with Daddy. Mommy, don't go. You and Daddy have to stay and sleep with me." The child's innocent demands tethered me to Liam's side. Liam and I were forced to cooperate, performing the role of a loving couple as if we were on stage. The first night at dinner, Theo excitedly held his small spoon, deliberately sitting between us. "Daddy, you have to serve Mommy some food." Liam paused, then raised his hand and placed a piece of fish on my plate. In that moment, I could hardly breathe. This was something the Liam from 3 years ago would never have done. He was cold, arrogant, and utterly inconsiderate of others' feelings. But now, he was diligently trying to embody a decent husband and father. Yet, in his eyes, there was always doubt. Late that night, Theo held Liam's arm, listening to us read his bedtime story. Liam's voice was deep and soothing. When he reached an exciting part, Theo burst into delighted giggles. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the father and son, a sudden, indescribable pang of sorrow in my heart. I desperately told myself, "Stella, don't get sucked in. This is just a fantasy life. Liam will regain his memory one day, and when he does, you will have nowhere to hide." But my heart, stubbornly, refused to obey. Liam was conflicted, too. I could see it in his eyes. His fatherly love for Theo was genuine, every action showed patience. But toward me, he had accepted that I was his wife, yet showed no hint of affection. His gaze, when directed at me, was always filled with suppressed confusion. It was as if he was asking, why did I marry a woman I have absolutely no feeling for? With every glance, I could feel his silent suspicion. Not only that, but old Mrs. Hudson, my mother-in-law, was getting anxious. Perhaps her son's near-death experience made her particularly desperate. She secretly observed us multiple times and finally said to me, "Stella, you and Liam are married. Why are you still sleeping in separate rooms? You need to pay more attention to him and spend more time with him. That's how his memory will return." My heart went cold. My mother-in-law's words sounded thoughtful, but they were a blatant command. She even took my hand, earnestly urging me, "Theo is still young. Once Liam recovers, you need to have a few more children. The Hudson family needs a lively future." Her expectation made me feel like I was sitting on pins and needles. But I couldn't refuse, I could only force a smile and nod. One evening, Theo was playing in the garden, accidentally falling and scraping his knee. My heart stopped in terror, and I rushed toward him. But before I could reach him, Liam was already there, scooping the child into his arms faster than I could move. "Theo, it doesn't hurt. Daddy's here." He patiently comforted the child, his expression so tense it looked as if he wished he could take the pain himself. Theo quickly stopped crying and laughed, wrapping his arms around his neck, shouting, "Daddy is the best." Watching this scene, the defense line in my heart suffered its first crack. If only this were all real. That night, I stood by the window, watching the hallway after Theo had fallen asleep. Liam's silhouette lingered there. He seemed to be hesitating, wondering whether to knock on my door. In the end, he did nothing but stand for a moment before turning and walking away. My heart, however, was in turmoil. The amnesiac Liam, devoid of his coldness and arrogance from 3 years ago, moved me with his love for Theo, and his restraint toward me made my heart tremble. Yet, I knew this was only temporary. The moment his memory returned, the truth would be revealed. And then, Theo and I would have no place left. The old lady's warning was no idle threat. She was always decisive. While feeling pity for her son's 3 years of ordeal, she also lamented that Liam and I were still not having another child. So, she personally orchestrated a night that was almost forced in its romance, a yacht night. The two of you haven't had any private time in ages. Her smile was gentle but held an undeniable authority. I arranged this yacht for you. Theo is not allowed to come. How can a husband and wife always let the child come between them? My heart sank. My mother-in-law's words sounded caring, but they were a blatant command. I looked at Liam. His expression was as cool as ever, he seemed unfazed by the arrangement. But the secret in my chest was burning like wildfire. What if his memory returned? What if he found out the truth about Theo's origins? The yacht sailed out onto the azure sea. The night was dark, and the salty ocean breeze hit our faces. Liam and I sat on the deck, the only sound the low murmur of the waves. Without Theo present, my time alone with him felt excruciatingly awkward for the first time. Want a drink? He broke the tension first, his tone light and unexpectedly easing the stalemate. I nodded and took the glass he offered. The amber liquid shimmered under the light. I almost urgently tilted my head back and drained it. Only alcohol could make me briefly forget this anxiety and fear. Glass after glass, my face grew warm. Liam's eyes also softened, seemingly losing that inherent distance. I find this very strange, he suddenly said in a low voice, his gaze fixed on my face. Strange what? My heart tightened. Why I have no memory of you, yet I feel like you shouldn't be a stranger. His voice was deep, tinged with confusion. I forced myself to look calm, offering a bitter smile, because I'm your husband. No sooner had the words left my mouth than a giant wave surged up from the sea, and the sky was instantly swallowed by dark clouds. Fierce winds lashed down with torrential rain. The yacht shook violently, as if it might capsize at any moment. The captain shouted in panic, Mr. and Mrs. Hudson. We can't continue. We can only make an emergency stop at the Hudson family's private island villa. The rain blinded me. Liam pulled me into his arms, his voice low and firm, hold on tight. In that moment, my heart rate was completely out of control. In the pouring rain, the yacht finally docked at the island's private harbor. We stumbled into the seaside villa, completely soaked. The house was empty, only the fire lit and the hearth casting a warm glow. Outside, thunder roared and the rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, enclosing the entire villa in a primitive solitude. I leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Liam's gaze lingered on me, seemingly restraining himself. He took a step closer, his voice hoarse, your clothes are soaked. You'll get sick. Should I go find you some pajamas? I stared at him blankly. The careful defense line in my heart felt like it was slowly crumbling in the face of the storm and the forced proximity of this night. This is a dramatic and satisfying conclusion to the story. Here is the translation of chapters 5 through 8, focusing on intense emotional language, suspense, and a satisfying resolution, all in authentic American English. Night had fallen, and the lights of the villa looked exceptionally lonely in the downpour. Rain pelted the floor-to-ceiling windows, like 1,000 fingers drumming a frantic, messy rhythm against the glass. Liam was heavily intoxicated and had collapsed onto the large bed in the master suite, quickly falling into a deep sleep. I dragged my heavy body, grabbing a change of clothes, and walked into the bathroom. As the hot water streamed down from the shower, my heart pounded. I didn't know if it was because of the storm or the air of this isolated island night. I should have resisted his proximity, yet the laughter and conversation we shared on the yacht made me feel, for the first time, that the amnesiac Liam was no longer the same cold, ruthless man. I wrapped myself in a towel, preparing to open the door, failing to notice that the thunder was masking all other noise. Just then, a thunderclap tore through the night sky, rumbling violently, as if the entire villa were shaking. Outside the door, Liam was startled awake by the noise, opening his eyes hazily. Thirsty, he got up to find water. As he approached the bathroom, he saw the door was slightly ajar. With the next flash of lightning, the entire bathroom was illuminated by white light. I froze. Liam was standing right in the doorway. His soaked shirt clung to his body, outlining a chiseled chest and abs. His eyes were blurred, carrying a hint of intoxication, but the look he gave me was fiery. I suddenly realized my own state, wet strands of hair scattered over my shoulders, the towel barely wrapped around me, a great deal of skin exposed. The next second, a deafening thunderclap struck. I gasped in fear, instinctively lurching into his embrace. Liam was momentarily shocked by my move, but quickly, his arms reflexively tightened, caging me securely in his hold. His body heat was scorching, tinged with a slight smell of alcohol, yet it made my heart race. All I could hear was the rain, the thunder, and his ragged breathing. Our eyes locked. The air was thick with a mixture of intimacy and danger. "Liam," I murmured, my voice trembling. He didn't reply, his gaze only deepening, as if pulled by some raw instinct. His hand tightened slightly, his fingertips brushing my damp hair, the action almost cautious yet uncontrollably shaking. Alcohol was the tinder. The thunderstorm was the catalyst. Our bodies erupted with an irresistible attraction. The distance between our lips finally vanished completely, and all control was lost. The familiar touch yanked me back to the memory of years ago, the first night I was in his arms. I was just as nervous, shy, yet consumed by the scorching heat he brought. Thunder rolled and rain poured. In the darkness of the villa, we were thrust toward each other by fate, intertwining once more. In the quiet morning, I slowly opened my eyes. The rain outside the window had stopped, and the air was filled with the fresh scent of earth and sea breeze. A scorching warmth emanated from beside me. I turned my head to see Liam asleep. His brow was furrowed, as if still troubled even in his dreams. The next second, he opened his eyes and looked at me. In that instant, I saw a foreign emotion flash in his eyes, yearning. His gaze seemed to be seeing me for the very first time, filled with an intense, undisguised emotion. I frantically looked away, but my heart was hammering. "Why?" he murmured softly, his voice husky, carrying the low magnetic tone of a drinker. "Why do I have no memory of you, yet I feel this way about you?" I stiffened. I forced myself to calm down, managing a small, strained smile. Maybe it was the alcohol. But deep down, I knew better than anyone that the sudden connection could not be explained by alcohol. It was the most primitive, fiery physical memory buried between us. After that unexpected night on the yacht, Liam's attitude towards me changed entirely. He was no longer the aloof, indifferent man who treated me like air. His eyes began to frequently settle on me, filled with a sense of exploration and curiosity, and even the fervor I refused to acknowledge. He would inadvertently reach out to pour wine for me at the dinner table. When I was chatting with guests, he would stand quietly behind me, like a silent shield. Even the simple lingering of his gaze was enough to send my heart into disarray. But I could not give in. I knew perfectly well that his amnesia was temporary. If one day he remembered everything and discovered the web of lies I had spun, Theo and I would be plunged into an abyss. So, I chose to evade him. I deliberately began to reduce our time alone. I brought my assistant to social events whenever possible, and even when home, I was always busy with Theo's schooling and family affairs, trying my best not to give him a chance to get close. But Liam was not the careless husband from 3 years ago. I could feel the profound focus in his eyes as he watched me effortlessly navigate a banquet, as he watched me uphold the title of Lady Hudson, as he watched me raise Theo to be polite and bright. That gaze, it was no longer doubt, but recognition, even sympathy. It was the first time I had ever seen the word sympathy in his eyes. In that moment, my heart felt like it had been violently seized. For 3 years, I had used all my strength to forge an impenetrable armor, yet under his gaze, I suddenly felt my hard shell might crack. And Liam was no longer content with just observing. He began to orchestrate various opportunities for us to be together, accompanying me to drop Theo off at school, attending cocktail parties with me, and even using the excuse of discussing group business to trap me in his office. Every proximity felt like a strong push against the defensive wall I had built. "You don't have to be so guarded all the time," he said softly one late night in the study. His deep eyes stared at me, as if trying to pierce my soul. "You're not alone." My heart trembled fiercely. In that moment, I realized I could resist no longer. His tenderness toward Theo, his concern for me, even just an accidental glance, reminded me of what it felt like to be protected and loved. It was a warmth I had coveted for so long, but never dared to reach for. But the human heart always deceives itself. One night after a banquet, Liam stopped holding back. He reached out and grasped my hand directly. The grip was undeniable, yet gentle enough to completely break me down. I didn't push him away. That night, there was no alcohol, no stormy coincidence. I simply moved towards him. Our intimacy was no longer an accident, it was a choice that came from the depths of my heart. When I woke up, Liam was quietly watching me, his gaze holding an undisguised sense of satisfaction and certainty. He whispered in my ear, "Stella, I think I'm actually falling in love with you." In that instant, my heart was utterly captivated. Yet, in the warmth of his embrace, a persistent unease lingered. "Liam, you say you're in love with me, but when your memory returns, and you know this is all a fabricated lie, will you still say those same words?" He had decorated the dining room himself, low candlelight, 2-place settings, a bouquet of white roses by the window, and my favorite Pinot Noir already decanted. Standing outside the door, I felt an absurd anticipation. Maybe tonight, he would say, let's start over. I didn't know that the dream would shatter with a single thud. Before I arrived, Liam, reaching to adjust the chandelier's position, bumped his head against the corner of a cabinet, a dull thud. The candle flickered, his body swayed, and he braced himself against the table edge. The next second, the long-sealed door of his memory was violently thrown open. The avalanche in the Alps, the almond-flavored pastry at the charity gala, my panicked retreating figure, the moment I burst into the memorial hall clutching my belly, the 99.99% on the paternity test, his vanishing consciousness before being lifted onto the helicopter, and my concealment of our relationship. Memories surged like a flood. He clutched his forehead, the candle flame leaving tiny scorch marks on his fingertips. When he looked up, his eyes had changed, familiar, cold, wounded, and lucid. When I pushed the door open, I only saw the soft candlelight on the table and a small crystal ornament rolling on the floor. He stood with his back to the light, a faint red mark on his temple, like a hasty boundary line violently splitting the past from the present. Liam? I softened my voice. I'm here. He looked at me, his mouth a tight line, his voice low and coldly restrained. Stellachan, let's talk. The air instantly chilled. I instinctively took a half step back, only to be firmly pinned in place by his next words. I remember. My heart dropped. He walked toward me, step by step. The tenderness in his eyes had been scraped clean by a knife, leaving only sharp hostility. The night of the charity gala, the pastries were drugged. You were the first to notice the bitter taste, yet you still took a small bite. He spoke through gritted teeth, every word distinct. The next day, you left, without telling me anything. Then when I had my accident, you broke into my funeral and lied to everyone that we were already involved and about to get married. I clenched my hands, my knuckles white. And here's the most impressive part, he gave a short, chilling laugh. You knew I had amnesia, but you never told me the truth. You dragged me into a performance of a perfect marriage every day, effortlessly navigating the city under my name, managing the group's social life flawlessly. It's truly brilliant. I looked at him, my throat constricted. At this moment, I finally understood. I had evaded fate for 3 years, but it had finally caught up. Speak, Stella. His voice trembled but was kept very low. Why did you lie to me? I closed my eyes, forcing myself to be calm, because I was greedy. Because I was scared. I looked up, meeting his gaze, unwilling to run anymore. The doctor said my constitution was weak, and terminating the pregnancy carried risks. I was alone, fired from my job, and couldn't pay rent. When your news aired on TV, I realized the man was you. Rushing into that funeral with the child was both a gamble and a desperate bid for survival. He stared at me, his gaze even colder. So you used my amnesia as your shield? Initially, I just wanted the paternity test so your family would acknowledge Theo. I inhaled, making sure every word landed cleanly. But you were missing, and your mother kept me. The child asked for his daddy every day. I forced a smile, my nose stinging. I became attached. I compromised. Then you came back. You didn't remember me, but you were wonderful to Theo and me. For the first time, I had something that felt like a home. I knew I shouldn't be greedy, but I truly couldn't let it go. He clenched his fist, veins protruding. And you chose to keep me in the dark all this time? I chose to live one more day. My voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, Liam. I know those words are worthless. But the warmth you gave me during this time is something I never had in my whole life before. Thank you. The candle flickered in the draft. The table between us felt like a silent river. Starting now, I gently took off the simple wedding band I always wore and placed it on the placemat. I will stop lying. I will leave. The group, the family, you and Theo, will all return to their proper place. You don't have to forgive me. His pupils suddenly constricted. You think you can just leave when you feel like it? I gave a bitter smile. I prepared for this long ago. He paused for a second. I continued. The day I moved in, I started saving money and taking courses for this day. Don't worry, I haven't touched your family's money. Theo, you are his father, and Hudson is his home. I won't wrench him away from you, that wouldn't be fair. My voice finally broke. I only ask one thing. Please don't speak ill of me to him. Let him always believe that his mommy and daddy loved him. Love? He sounded furious. Feeding him a lie, you call that love? He raised a hand and rubbed his temple. The pain from the bump made him gasp briefly, and his voice became even colder. Did you ever think about what if I never remembered? Would you have kept up the act forever? I paused for a second, then nodded. If you chose never to remember the past, then yes, forever. Until you didn't need me anymore. His Adam's apple bobbed twice, as if he was struggling to swallow something. After a long silence, he let out a low, broken laugh. You're incredible, Stella. You handled my heart perfectly, made me depend on you when I was amnesiac, and hate you when I woke up. I stopped defending myself, instead pushing a letter I had already written toward him. Inside are all my public schedules, foundation accounts, external commitments, and a complete handover of the charity projects I personally oversaw for the last 3 years. You can hate me, but please make sure these are seen through. They are the only things I don't want to abandon. He stared at the letter, an unspeakable storm of emotion brewing in his eyes. I knew any more explanation would only hurt him more. I turned to grab my coat. My fingertips touched the doorknob when his voice slammed into me from behind. Don't you dare take another step. I froze, my back rigid. He walked up to me, standing just a step away, his restraint trembling. You can leave. But first, tell Theo why. Don't run away without a word like you did 3 years ago. I closed my eyes and nodded, fine. A soft patter of footsteps came from outside the door. Mommy? Theo's childish voice trailed from the hallway, sleepy and sweet. Daddy, the candles are so pretty. I spun around and saw a flicker of lost control on Liam's profile. The candlelight illuminated the red storm in his eyes. In that instant, I understood. The tenderness of tonight was meant for me. The bump on his head had shattered our shared ending into pieces. I knelt to hug Theo, trying my best to hide my shaking. Sweetheart, Mommy needs to tell you something, today. Behind me, Liam's knuckles were clenched tightly in the seam of his pants pocket. In the dead of night, I pulled my suitcase into the corner of the bedroom. It only contained a few simple clothes and my most important documents. Theo slept peacefully in his small bed, his eyelashes fluttering like little wings. Looking at his tender face, my heart felt like it was being sliced open, cut by cut. I'm sorry, baby, I choked out, gently kissing his forehead. Mommy can't stay with you anymore, but you have Daddy. He will protect you. Mommy has to go finish her own journey. I thought this separation would be forever. Yet, in my lonely exile abroad, I repeatedly dreamed of Theo crying out for me, and Liam's eyes full of hatred. I told myself to be strong, to study relentlessly, or else my departure would be meaningless. I buried all my pain in books. After a year, I had truly changed. The woman in the mirror was more confident, more independent, as if I had made up for all the regrets of my past life. Until that day. It was autumn in Cambridge. Golden sycamore leaves carpeted the path. As I walked out of the academic building, I saw a tall figure standing stiffly by the entrance, holding a bouquet of flowers. I froze. How was it possible? He had actually found me here. Liam, my voice trembled, my heart nearly beating out of my chest. He walked toward me, his gaze complex and burning. This past year, I tried to hate you, I tried to forget you. But no matter how hard I tried, I realized I couldn't do it. I took a half step back, my lips trembling. You shouldn't have come. He suddenly took my hand, his palm scorching hot. If you feel you lied to me and hurt me before, then pay me back with the rest of your life. He said with a deep, resolute voice, Stella, will you stay with me forever? Tears instantly blurred my vision. I could suppress it no longer and threw myself into his arms. By the river Cam, we held each other tightly, as if trying to fill the void of the past year. Just then, an uplifting melody drifted from the lawn across the river. A student orchestra was rehearsing Pachelbel's Canon in D. The music floated on the wind, surrounding us, like a blessing from fate. I looked up, seeing the undisguised depth of feeling in Liam's eyes. Tears flowed, but they were tears of happiness. Liam, I will. He leaned down and kissed me. The wind rustled the falling leaves, and all of Cambridge bore witness to our reunion. In this moment, I understood, even after lies, misunderstandings, loss, and reunion, our love, ultimately, was destined for forever.